Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan. This is a show where we talk about what people believe and why every single week, live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time. Joining me this week is a really, really cool content creator. You've probably heard of him, but if you haven't, I'm glad to introduce you. His name is Prophet of Zod. Prophet of Zod, what's going on tonight?
I am on your show. That is going on so far.
Yep, that's a fact. Let's get down to brass tacks. Absolutely.
Very excited to be here and finally do something with you after all this time. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so, Zod, you and I first met 2 years ago at Faithless Forum 2018. And I remember you and Cirrus were like the two content creators there that I didn't know who you guys were. I think a lot more people knew who you were. I just personally did not know. You sure as hell didn't know who I was. So, yeah,
actually not a lot of people knew who I was that time around.
Which is crazy because you came from Alaska to Texas to this conference. And like, not as many, that's just amazing. It was really, really cool to meet you then. And then we got to hang out last year, which is cool. But yeah, like you've been doing YouTube for a little bit now. You cover like really a couple different topics. Why don't you explain the channel for those who aren't familiar with you?
Yeah, essentially, I'm another atheist YouTube channel, I guess. I do content mostly targeted at people who are already doubting or starting not to believe or whatever, just helping them come to terms with their lack of belief and kind of finding their footing as they make their way out of the faith. So I do that through sometimes response videos, sometimes just generally talking about topics related to religion and lack of belief. Sometimes I do silly cartoons. Those have gotten a little more sparse. So
yeah, and what I like, yeah, absolutely. What I like about your content too is you're an ex-Christian like I am, and the way that you kind of frame your videos, and not all of them, but in a lot of them, is in the context of a Christian who might be doubting would be watching this, right? And like kind of walking through what the step-by-step process would be, because sometimes it's easy to just like put out like, okay, here's the argument, listen to this and you should be good. But like, that's just not how people respond to things. A lot of times they sometimes respond to narrative, or they kind of need to be walked through step-by-step on why something makes sense. I think you do a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think just presenting arguments is really the core thing. I think what I try to focus on, and I think what really helps people, is introspecting on what it's like to come out of faith, what kinds of things you feel inside when you do, what kind of mental gymnastics you go through, or what kind of struggles you go through with people around you. I think that's really something people need to hear when they're finding their footing as a non-believer and trying to figure out who they are and how they relate to their former families and stuff like that. So,
yeah. And speaking of that, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about your journey in the sense of how you relate to your family, because a question I get a lot from people is, how do I talk to family about this? Because it's different from just talking to, somebody you don't know, and somebody that you do know is they kind of know your history. They know, and depending on the actual religious sect too, there could be extra boundaries and extra kind of hurdles you have to go through. But I was wondering, like, could you share your experience a little bit with how you dealt with that and how you work with your family now?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is, with your family, talk about it very little for the most part, if they're still believers. I found the time and way to kind of come out to most of my family members. Most of them were not surprised by the time I said anything. But really give them the chance to approach you and ask you questions, or give it the opportunity to come up in conversation. Hopefully those in your life will be constructive and kind in how they do that. And if they do, you can just kind of follow their lead and let the conversation go where it will, and make sure you don't push them too far outside their comfort zone, in my opinion. But one of the biggest things I think you can do as a non-believer that will have an impact on Christians is just be there and be a good, kind person, and don't always be pushing atheism. Don't be mean about it. That just really feeds into a narrative that they're already getting at church, and is just going to reinforce whatever helps them entrench against non-believers.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like, this is like for me, maybe you shared this experience too. Becoming an atheist was kind of getting a new identity for myself. Like I super identified as a Christian, and then kind of you swung between labels for a bit, and then finally saying out loud, like, "Oh, I am an atheist." Like that's a difference not only in how I relate to other people, but how other people are going to relate to me, because that label is a signifier for them. Like, oh, this is how you should interpret people in a certain way. And if you don't meet those expectations, that's great, because, hey, whoa, this thing I'm hearing about at church, but this doesn't match up with this person that I know, and I think that's how we can kind of change people's expectations, that through first, first encounters with experience of people. I think one comparison I like to make for folks to understand is like the LGBT movement really, when it started to go mainstream a lot more, I think a lot of people, if you cite, why they changed, they'll say, well, I had a friend who came out to me as gay, or I knew someone that came out as gay, and they started to become more open-minded to that, because suddenly it wasn't just, a person they saw on TV or a character they saw on a movie or something. This was a real life human being that had, value in their lives. And so I encourage people to come out when they can, but there's definitely limits. Like I don't want people to come out if it's not safe, or, if it's going to be super detrimental. But like, even though it's going to be hard, I think it's worth it in the long run. But yeah, I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think first off, coming out, you have to be very careful about. And one thing I'll always tell people if they come to me for advice is be very careful about how and when you do it, because you can never take it back once you start to. And it's going to affect your relationship with a lot of people. And you need to really make sure that you're in a position, safety wise, all the connections you need that provide for you and help you. You need to make sure that you're ready to sever that, or that you're not going to sever it necessarily. And that you're not going to harm your relationships with people in your life too badly. I think it's important to be who you are, but you need to weigh that against what this is going to do to people in your life who you care about. So I would always tell people, be cautious, feel your way through it. Try to find advice from people you trust who are non-believers. And just it depends so much on the person, the situation. I have a lot of family who is very caring, and it really hasn't impacted my relationship with them that much. I have a lot of people more on the periphery, of people I'd grown up with, who you've probably all heard it before, but they like to come at you with either harsh comments. I've literally been called the Antichrist. People just love to tell you what you believe as an atheist. You think the universe came from nothing. You think there's no basis for morality, and they won't hear you tell them that that's not the case, and they'll not hear you articulate what you actually believe. And some of those people, you just kind of have to let that conversation fall by the wayside and decide whether that relationship is worth maintaining.
Yeah, you just get put in a box. And isn't it interesting that, we're worried about other people's comfort for us being our most authentic selves? Like how awful is that? That somebody, if somebody came out to me and said, Dan, I'm actually Muslim. Okay, like, I don't give a shit. It's like, I mean, obviously I care about them, right? I care about their journey and where they're going through, but I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, I can't talk to you anymore because, the Bible says I can't or something. I don't know. Like, but, and just expressing disbelief in something, and just expressing, hey, I don't use this identifier anymore. Like suddenly that's the big one. Like that is what makes people the most uncomfortable when it comes to, religious stuff. I think a switch in religious belief also probably has that effect, but for some reason the disbelief is the real kicker for a lot of people.
It almost feels like this is a weird, bizarre Star Trek alien world where so many people believe in an invisible spirit being that just simply not believing that casts you in this weird light. Just that there's actually a word, atheist, for people who don't believe, and they're put in a special category. And then people have these reactions to them. to me, when you really, that's one of those things that took me time to really understand how weird that is. But when you pull yourself far enough out of the cultural context of our society just accepting Christianity as a given, or some kind of religion as a given, you recognize that's just extremely, extremely strange, but it's something you have to contend with. And yeah, like you said, we have to accommodate people's feelings a lot. I honestly talk to young people, including one of my children who's an adult now, about the fact that yes, Christians are going to be saying pushy things on Facebook or just in social conversations a lot. And you can't say anything near the equivalent of that, or else it's going to be perceived like this. Is that fair and right? No, but it's the world we live in. And to some extent, and this might sound wrong to say, but we have to navigate that in a way that understands the climate we live in.
It's literally damned if you do, damned if you don't. But yeah. It's like, you know, if you speak out, right, oh, suddenly you're the atheist stereotype of the guy who likes to get in arguments and fight with people. But if you don't say anything, then you're invisible and your voice doesn't matter and your opinion doesn't exist as far as most people are concerned. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in the same camp. You do have to pick your battles, but more and more every day, Zod, I'm just like, you know what? Just kind of, just fuck it. Just like let your freak flag fly. You know, like this isn't about other people. It isn't about other people. It's about my journey and about how I got here. And if somebody else isn't okay with that, that is honestly their problem. You know, if somebody wants to tell me their Christian story again, or their Muslim story, that's cool. I will respect and listen to that, and I will engage with them. But like, I should be able to do that too. I should be able. If someone says, "Let me tell you how I met Jesus," be like, "Oh, cool. Let me tell you when I didn't." But yeah, that you're. I was just gonna say too. This is an American context as well. I think if you go to other countries like the UK and Australia, they probably can't relate. I think if you came out as atheist, a lot of them would just be like, "Okay." But anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, that's how you interact with the people around you is also part of your personal journey, in my opinion. I'm not saying anything that you really should or shouldn't do. I don't think we should be beholden to Christians to lay down like sheep and let them trot all over us. And I think that is a huge disparity. What they expect from us in conversation versus what they allow of themselves is totally unfair. There's no question about that. So how you in your personal life choose to engage and what battles you choose to pick and what you want to make of your relationship with the people around you who still are Christian or have some regard for Christianity, I think that's just part of your personal growth and experience. And I think we all just need to very carefully find our way through that in light of what it means for us in our journey and our relationships with people.
Yeah, and to say all that is also to say there are better ways to do it than others. Like you can, and I'm not saying don't be diplomatic. I'm not saying just tear down everything you see on site as soon as you come out. But like, do it in a way, I think, because like your first time coming out, that's going to impact people who've never seen that before. Who don't have that experience, and so they're going to judge other atheists based on what they think of you and if they think that your reasoning is valid. And that's not fair. That's not fair for you to be, the reason for people. People shouldn't be given that role, but that's just the way it is, unfortunately. And so I like to remind people that, hey, unfortunately, you are kind of an ambassador for atheism because you might be the only person they know who's openly atheist. And that's just, your conversations with them are going to affect how they treat atheists from the future. And in order for us to grow as a community, we really do have to, keep talking about it with people, keep being as respectfully open-minded, yet also, tactfully firm in our positions, confident in ourselves, not conceding too much ground, right? And being sure of who we are. And that's a balance. And I'm still figuring out that balance. I think everybody is, but something good to do, right?
Yeah. And I don't mean to downplay that there are objectively better and worse ways to handle it. I'm not saying that that's not the case. But it just depends so much on the situation. And we do have a certain responsibility to other non-believers to identify strongly enough that they feel emboldened and to be an example and to be out there for them. And that's why I like to normalize the word atheism, for example.
Yes.
It has a certain feel to people's ears, but we need to be out there, show that we are just normal, regular people, and just let that word lose its meaning. And hopefully we'll live in a society where that word's unnecessary, because it's weird that the word exists, in my opinion.
Yeah, it would just be the norm, you know? But we have 4 calls in the queue right now, and all of them are really, really interesting to me. And I'm excited. Of course, you can call the number on screen if you want to call into the show. I also just really quick want to remind you guys that, hey, this show is pretty much all done by volunteers. And a way you can support the show and making sure we get good equipment and, help feed the crew and a bunch of other stuff is donating on Patreon. It's patreon.com/truthwanted if you want to help the show out. We really do appreciate it. Again, all of that money goes to the ACA to help make shows like this and other shows even better. So please consider doing that as well. But let's go ahead and get to our first call. I want to talk to Matt in Maryland, who has, in my opinion, a very interesting topic. Matt, what's going on?
Hey, Dan. Yeah, I usually call in with sort of philosophical stuff, but I was watching a paranormal show and thought, hey, why not have some fun?
Yes. Please, dear God, tell me what you watched on your paranormal show.
So I'm watching one of these shows, and basically they show video clips taken by people of like different paranormal things, and some of them are like cryptids. Have you ever heard of this term, cryptids?
Oh, you know it. You know I have. Absolutely.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, a cryptid is basically like a creature whose existence is a matter of dispute as to whether they actually exist or not. So, for example, Bigfoot would be one of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm watching this show, and they play a Bigfoot clip, and it's not particularly convincing to me, but one of the commentators who, they often refer to themselves as some type of expert in areas of the paranormal, makes the assertion that perhaps why Bigfoot has been so elusive could be due to the fact that he is an interdimensional being.
Yes, of course. That is the most parsimonious, best,
right?
using
and then they even went on to say other things like maybe he could also be an underground creature or have powers of invisibility. Just all in a line made those assertions.
Sure. Yeah, why not? Like, look, Bigfoot, obviously, we've only seen him a couple times, and it's been really grainy and really, non-specific. So he has to, underground, invisible, interdimensional, traveler. Maybe he's a ghost also. I mean, it could be a number of things. But yeah, all these seem pretty reasonable to me. What do you think, Zod?
Boy, that's going to take a little bit of time for me to digest, I guess.
Yeah. What's up, Matt?
Yeah, what do you think about that, Zod?
I think that is definitely one of the possible explanations for why we don't see Bigfoot very often and why he tends to appear in grainy footage. Yeah, I guess.
No, see, the grainy footage thing, he's using like electromagnetic disruptors.
Or maybe it's like in Spider-Verse where everybody gets all grainy and glitchy when they travel between dimensions.
Maybe there's like a Bigfoot verse, like Spider-Verse, where there's a bunch of different Bigfoots, and that's why he looks different in each camera. Oh, this is
and
speculation
I
here.
was so disappointed too because they just said it and then just went to a different thing. And I was like, what? You're just going to hit me with that? And then no explanation or anything. But
so as a general principle, if you can conceive of a creature, does that mean the less you see it, the more often it probably travels between dimensions?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Who knows?
So there's really no such thing as an indication that something doesn't exist. There are just indications that things travel between dimensions a lot.
Correct. I've seen a porcupine only a couple times in my life. So they're probably high on my list of interdimensional travelers. I'd say.
I mean, what about everyone who lives in Australia, right? I don't know if you've heard.
Or Zod's the only person I know from Alaska. He could actually be an interdimensional traveler. I don't know.
We're feeding the show between dimensions.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's true. But Matt, your call when you from the call screener, you said something interesting, which was like you were asking whether this was ethical. And I didn't quite. What do you mean by that? Is it ethical?
So what I wanted to ask you about was sort of these shows, because there's quite a few of them out there now on different channels, and I just was watching this and I found myself wondering how many people are watching this, like, ironically, like just as entertainment, versus to how many people they could potentially be convincing of these ideas, you know, and then possibly corrupting their, you know, truth detectors, and that possibly leading to, you know, maybe not intentionally bad, but you know, if you believe certain things that aren't true, particularly like in terms of, you know, with the pandemic, what we got going on, there could be potentially bad consequences. So I was kind of wondering, you know, should I be watching this? I mean, it's so entertaining, but at the same time, am I sort of tacitly supporting this?
Yeah. So I've actually thought about this. Yeah, I've thought about this, and I have a take on this. So first, I want to say, when I was a kid, I watched kind of these ghost hunter shows and stuff with my dad. And my dad, even though he is a religious man, also has a sense of skepticism to him, which maybe I get that from him a little bit. I don't know, but like he would watch these shows with me, and I'd be like, "Oh, Dad, what if all this stuff is real?" You know, but he would watch it kind of the same way you do, kind of ironically and just like, you know, for a laugh. But it did kind of fuel this sense of, well, maybe, you know, like what if? And I don't know whether that was good for me or not, because I think it kind of led me to be a bit more credulous about a lot of things, you know. And I had a conversation once with somebody a few years ago about tarot cards. You know, like she actively knows that tarot cards and stuff isn't real, or psychics. I'm sorry, it was about psychics. She knows that psychic stuff probably isn't real, but she likes to watch for entertainment. And I just think about, you know, yeah, I get it. They're playing for the people who make these shows, right? They're playing it for audiences who do watch this for entertainment, but they are also directly profiting off of the people who don't see this as just entertainment, but as like documentary. I think that's unethical. I do, because if I'm going to do a show like this one, giving my honest take about something, even if it's wrong, that's not unethical, because I'm not actively lying to you, right? But if I'm filming a show like a ghost hunter show and I'm actively editing things or making things look, you know, more than what they really are, then that is a form of lying. And I don't think people should make money off of that if they're doing it, you know. Like, unfortunately, it seems like a market for that is always going to be there, especially amongst Americans. But yeah, I agree with you, and I think I've come to the conclusion at this point where I couldn't support that, even as ironic, unless, you know, if I'm taking clips and I'm directly critiquing them, that's the only time I would do that, because otherwise, yeah, I don't want to support liars and charlatans or people who like abuse people's confidence, you know.
Yeah, to me, I wouldn't feel too bad watching it if I knew that, like, the people who were already convinced were just going to keep being convinced. But if they are actually convincing people who wouldn't otherwise, because it's really entertaining. I mean, it's so freaking amusing.
Yeah, I want Zod's take.
Have any thoughts on this, Zod?
Zod has some take. Real quick, I want to give a story before Zod talks, because this is a moment that woke me up a little bit about the Travel Channel specifically. Because they're a big progenitor of these shows. But I was on Bert the Conqueror when I was a kid. I was like in the background, but they came to this camp that I was at, and they had, this camp had a blob, kind of like in that movie. When was it with Will Ferrell? That summer camp movie. I can't remember. Anyway, the blob thing, you know, that you see in the summer camp movie. So they wanted to do a blob thing with Bert the Conqueror, and you know, they made us do takes and redo stuff like with the kids who were talking with him. And also they made us come up with like a rating system for cool blobs, like the kids would wave up their hands, but like it wasn't, there was absolutely nothing natural about the reality television process at all. And they edited to make it look like a coherent sequence of events, but really we were reshooting stuff. They were giving us lines to say. Like it really woke me up pretty early pretty much everything on reality TV is absolute garbage and fake. Well, I shouldn't say garbage. Yeah. It's entertaining, but it's like, it's not real. None of it's real. There may be some circumstances that they caught on tape that are natural, but most of it is a lot of spin. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's what I think about too when I think about this. But anyway, Zod, go ahead. I interrupted you and I want you to say your piece.
Yeah, I think, it could be tempting to say that anybody who buys into that is going to believe anyway. And if you look at that show and find it believable, you kind of deserve to believe in it. But I find it very problematic as well, because it's not just a matter of if they convince new people. I think one of the worst things about these shows is they give legitimacy to basically stupid, insane ideas. And we have a huge problem, especially if you have a Facebook feed, you'll know this. We have a huge problem of people who really don't have any idea how to vet good information or what good journalism looks like or how to cite sources. This isn't taught well enough in schools or colleges at all. And so anything that's on screen or appears in a story, in a news feed or whatever, if it's interesting to you, it feels valid. And so I think these shows just lend a feeling of validity to ideas that are just absolutely pointless and insane. And people who are going to believe that are then going to start believing conspiracy theories about politicians or COVID or whatever else. And so I think it does a huge disservice. It totally pollutes an already tenuous landscape in our country, especially of journalism and fact checking and stuff like that. And people who sit there and watch that, to them, that's as legitimate as any kind of news. And so I think that's a really dangerous place to be. And I think we really have no fact-based narrative in our country anymore. And now we have I won't get directed at any. We have politicians who are weaponizing that. I don't know how far down that path I need to go.
That works. That's legal. We can say that. Yeah. We live on a bad episode of the History Channel show. Like one of those just crazy. Like that was like the original Facebook. Crazy COVID-19 posts or whatever. It really did originate from that. And you know what? Like, I would not be surprised if we could draw a direct link between the United States and our ability for skepticism and the kind of television programming we have on TV. I bet we could find a correlate, because how popular are those shows, right? Like everybody's watched them at least once. I can't say that about every show on TV, but everyone's seen a ghost show. Everyone's seen, it's crazy.
And before that, you had Coast to Coast with Art Bell. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember that. But this kind of stuff has already been on there, and it's legitimately distressing to me trying to converse with people from my past and see the absolutely crazy things they believe in and their total inability to distinguish a plausibly sourced journalistic story from something that people just said. And it's I don't know how we're going to recover from it as a society, to be honest.
Trust journalism at all. We've had a consistent, if you look at the stats on it, it's like, I can't cite the exact figures, but for a number of years now, our trust in media in general has just completely gone down. And there are times where you should be skeptical, but they're also where we get our facts from. Like everything I know what's happening in the White House is coming from some media outlet telling me, or like what's happening with political movements in this country and things like that. Like that's how we got our information. Part of it is too, we're just getting sort of sketchy sources of information now, what with the internet and stuff. I'm telling you, for every good thing the internet does, there's like two bad things at least. It gets really
one trick is good journalistic sources. There are built-in safeguards and there are mechanisms for finding and backing up information. So there is something there, but the problem is it's not always trustworthy. And so people who have a certain vested interest going into the conversation like to fall to the generalization that it's not always trustworthy, or it has a bias of some kind.
Yeah.
And it lets them just flatly dismiss it. And then they fall back to whatever just cartoonishly weird thing they found posted on the internet. And everybody just gravitates toward what they want to hear to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are good points too, because it kind of goes back to the whole thing that I said about the entertainment value. Is a lot of this stuff is driven by ratings and things of that sort, rather than, you know, how well vetted or valuable this potential information could be to people. And that was also another really good point you made, Zod, about potentially reconfirming existing beliefs. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
But, all right. Well, before I go, Dan, I just want to say one thing. I was looking at the AXP and Truth Wanted channels, and I noticed AXP has like 300,000 subscribers, but y'all are only down at like 12,000 or something. So everyone out there needs to subscribe to Truth Wanted, man.
Hey, you said it, not me. All right. Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate you calling in. And a great topic for a call. I love calls like that. But yeah, Truth Wanted. We're a less credulous coast to coast. That's how I like to build this show. I'm Art Bell, except my voice isn't as smooth, but my logic is better. Maybe let's go with that. Yeah, ghost shows, not ethical. Or the movies too. Oh my God, how many movies are like based on a true story? You know,
yeah, before people even realize it, it gets them accepting ideas based on what's interesting to them, and then I don't even think they realize they're doing it. And now you have people seriously thinking that 5G towers are shooting whatever into your brains, and you know, it's like the more nutty it is, the more people are drawn toward it.
You're like for somehow everybody's crazy uncle has like formed a coalition and like a super PAC and is now influencing our politics. I think that's what happened. I think they all just politically organized, and now we're seeing it happen. Maybe by Bill Gates. Ooh, spooky. Wait, I don't know if Bill Gates would fund a thing to undermine himself unless that's what he wants us to think. But anyway, again, we got some really interesting calls, and I'm excited to talk about this next one. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Itto?
Hi, yeah, it's Itto.
Itto, nice to talk to you,
Hello?
Itto. What's going on? Welcome to Truth Wanted.
Thank you so much for the wonderful shows. I've been listening to all of them, and yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Your call is a call topic that we've never discussed before. And I'm just going to read from what the call screener wrote. I think you were asking about what can we do to make more disabled people feel safe to leave their faith? And I was wondering, could you expand on that?
So I called a few weeks ago into Talk Hidden, and I am an atheist, and I am totally blind. I'm 31. It took me a long time to come out, and I am very public about it. But the fact that I am public is not because of anything, but I don't have family, so I don't have anything to lose. Everyone is stranger to me, so people, they don't accept me for who I am. So I just, I gave up. I am originally from Morocco. I gave up that. So I am a journalist, and I enjoyed the first call, by the way. It was really interesting. I was like, yeah, when my friends would talk to me about, like, oh, I read this news on Facebook, and I'm like, what a good source, huh? But
yeah, right.
Anyways, that is, yeah, that's another, like, fun topic. But so as a journalist, I've been here in the States for almost, like, this is the fourth year, so almost 4 years. And I was interviewing, I did a podcast 2 years ago, interviewing the disabled. And I have a lot of friends who are disabled, but they can't speak about the fact that, they're atheists, or even switching the dress, as I call it, going from Christianity to Islam or Islam to Christianity, or changing faith is really hard to express. Of course, most of them, they change it. Sometimes I have proofs and all of that, as I said, as a journalist, like interviewing them just for the sake of, communities, and I understand that and the needs and all of that. But the problem is, like, whenever I would say, they would say no, because how society views the disabled community, already atheists by non-atheists are seen as, not good people. So if someone is disabled, they are viewed as not good by the characteristics of, what it means to be complete or incomplete. Then when you add atheism to that, it becomes kind of more neglection, and the disabled communities, I have, unfortunately, I'm hoping now I started my YouTube channel a few weeks ago, and I'm hoping to start to talk about this, about how Abrahamic religions are actually do not even support the disabled community, and it's psychologically damaging because I was myself there. But the fear of losing the communities is what is impacting these the disabled communities. So I would appreciate any advice or basically feedback or anything.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, if you could, I'd love for you to go back on hold after we're done with your call so you could talk to our call screener, because I want to put your YouTube channel link hopefully in the description for those who are interested, because I'm interested and I definitely want to see your perspective on that. But yeah, so I'll start off with a story. At my last job, someone who I worked with remotely sort of was quadriplegic, and she got around with a motorized chair. And so we had talked about, I think at some point I had mentioned my show to her. She found out I had the show or whatever. And she turns out she was atheist too. She was non-religious, I don't know if she used the term atheist, but she shared with me absolute horror stories, to me, horror stories of just people who, she would just be minding her own business going down the street, and people would see her, in her chair and just say oh, can I pray for you? As if they want to try to heal her with their prayers. They just think they can do that. And first of all, how fucking awful is that? That you're taking pity on this person when this person is just trying to, they're living their life. Okay. And they're getting around just fine. They don't need you to, they don't need your sympathy, but also just this idea. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry. That actually for me is a super cool experience. I live in Arkansas, so one time I am totally blind. I was, just sitting next to my door, listening to a book. As I said, I am totally blind. There's this person come in and says hello in a really low voice, and I said hi, and they said I have a gift for you, and I said, oh, who are you? And she dropped a printed book into my lap, and I said, sorry, I'm blind, I can't read printed. And she said, the Lord will help you. And I said, no, I am an atheist, and your God can't do that either. Even if there is God, a printed book can't be read by a blind person. That's just, illogical. And another time, I met another person next to Walmart, and they conclude oh, is it because you are disabled? And when I was talking to my disabled friends, they said that's what they don't want to hear, because the fact that, if that's true, that because of disability, we don't believe in God, then all non-disabled people would be religious, right? That would be their logic.
Or
following
we
their
just...
logic is...
We wouldn't have disabled people anymore, because according to the Bible, if you're a real follower, you can heal people. That's what the apostles did. And, an amputee hasn't gotten their legs back because somebody prayed over them. It hasn't happened. So yeah, I don't understand how people get to that point. Again, just how rude that is. Oh my gosh, that is so rude. I can't wrap my head around it.
And God's fine with you being blind until he wants you to read a certain book.
Yeah,
it's really bizarre priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
only his book. Like I got a master's degree by reading by my finger or listening to them, and I am going for another master and hopefully PhD again after that. And that's for sure, I guarantee the whole world, because I know that I will never see again because I was stabbed to my eyes and they were exploded. So it was a horrible act from a human being. And if someone tells me like, oh, because you're blind, I'm like, because that's, or some people, they would say, when I say no, they would say, oh, because actually God has the right to blind you. And I'm like, well, that because my uncle's wife is the one who blinded me. And I would say, well, is my uncle's wife God then? If that's the case, then I don't like her either.
Yeah, what a loving God, right? Like, imagine if we all lived in a world where our heads are on fire all the time, and we were just like, well, I mean, and we're just like, hey, I wish we lived in a world where our heads weren't on fire all the time. And somebody was like, well, you know, God has the right to keep your head on fire. You know, also it would affect your free will somehow. You know, like it's ridiculous, it's absurd, and
it's sad the number of things that aren't necessarily going to result from religion, but that religion allows into the conversation. And I can't really speak to the experiences of any disabled person, but I can imagine that there are probably a lot more of those that can come up.
Yeah, I think
when
that
you have a disability.
I honestly genuinely believe that you probably find amongst religious people that they're going to view disabled people as lesser more often than a secular person. I truly think that. Like, I think that there is a belief that's not true, that somehow you're not just as capable of doing literally everything else in your life, right? That this one disability is somehow affecting you cognitively. I think that's such a common belief that really makes me mad, because
I was raised in Islam, that's Morocco, and actually Islam supports that idea that disabled people are cursed, they're less human beings, and all of that stuff. So I can't speak more on Christianity, like, even though I've read a lot and all of that, but I know about Islam, it's really bad. Like, they are already, according to Islam, disabled people are not good. So
yeah, in the Bible, you could definitely see examples of just people are cursed because they didn't follow God, and this was the result of that. And it's definitely around today, although definitely not as common. But I guarantee it. You can find every major city in this country, there'll be a church that says that. You know, so it's absurd. But yeah, I want to go back real quickly to just the original point you called it, which was, how do we normalize atheism amongst the disabled community? And to be honest with you, that's a question that you would probably have a better answer for than I would. You're right that, like, atheism, as we were talking about, causes sort of social isolation for a lot of people, at least when you're coming out. And so I without being disabled myself, I can't imagine what that's like. I don't know what the best thing would be, other than, honestly, what you're doing right now is probably the best thing, you know, making a YouTube channel and talking about this and talking to me about this on this show, and like getting the word out there that, hey, you exist and you have opinions on things, damn it. Like, that's what is really important. And just normalizing it the best that you can. Yeah, maybe, you know, there's already intersectional groups of, like, you know, Black atheists and stuff that can talk about those specific issues, and just kind of groups out there like that. Maybe there's groups out there for atheists who are disabled. I don't know. If there isn't, I think you should make one, and I'll help you make it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's why I keep calling and like emailing and all of that. Is I want to have like the disabled, even like the religious disabled people, like challenge me on this, because for me, like, the question, I'm not asking it for me, because as I said in the beginning of the call, I have nothing to lose. My parents died when I was little. I have no family. I am an asylee in the U.S. I am basically, everyone is stranger. I have best friends for sure who are also atheists. So I don't, you know, I am thinking about the disabled communities who are in one community. They were born and raised there, and they have a fear of losing that community. And how can it be of like help to support them in that transition?
Yeah, and this is the thing I always tell people. It's like, hey, it's oftentimes it's not the logic that's holding people back. It's the sense of identity that's going to change and the instability that comes with that. You know, I was a part of a Christian community and I lost that, and that actively harmed my life for a while. You know, that was not a good thing. It made me very sad, and it made me kind of figure out, what am I doing? And if it weren't for groups like the Atheist Community of Austin and other folks, like I don't know where I'd be. I don't know what I do or how I integrate myself. So yeah, I think, you know, reorienting people, helping them find a new sense of identity, and like creating a new community is probably the best thing you can do. We have so many other calls that I want to get to tonight, but thanks so much for calling in again. Hopefully people can check out to see what you're doing.
Thank you so much, guys.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just, we'll definitely, hopefully talk again sometime, because I want to know where that goes. That's totally new to me. If there's some disabled atheists that are watching this program, check that channel out, see what you guys can do. And that's just fucking cool. I like that. Yeah. Zod, any comments before we go on to the next call?
Yeah, I would agree with you that this is a difficult thing for us to speak to because it's not our experience, and we can't really understand what their difficulties are or what unique challenges they're presented coming out. I can understand in general terms that it's going to be more difficult for anybody who has any other social disadvantage, whether you're a minority who's looked down on a certain part of the world, or you have a disability or whatever else. You're already carrying baggage that some of us don't carry, and so taking on atheism is a whole other thing for you. For me, as far as I know, atheism is really the only stigma I carry, and I can choose kind of when to put it out there and when not to. So I can see how there'd be a whole other challenges. But if I were to think of one thing we could do as a community to help, it would just be make sure we're open and welcoming to them, and that they understand that we're hearing what they need, and just be ready to listen, not tell them things, not try to tell them what their struggles are, what their issues are, but just hear it from them and be ready to accommodate and be a community that will help catch them, because I'm sure there are all kinds of issues. I don't think there's one broad strokes issue that they have within the religious community, but whether it's a disability or even just an illness, religion is going to have some kind of narrative that it builds around that, and people who are suffering from it have this pressure to live up to that. And so I think whatever we can do to actually hear what they need and be there to catch them, I think will help, and just make sure that they know they have a place to go.
Yeah, allyship, baby. That's what it's all about. I'm down for it. I think it's really great that you can talk about it on this show for sure. I'm honored, and I'd be happy to help in any way, because that's what it's all about. We got a lot more calls in the queue here. I'm going to try to speed calls up a little bit here, just because so many people, they just want to talk to you, Zod. It's all you. You know, that's why they're here. But the next call I want to get to is Unholymole from Illinois. Unholymole, what's going on? Unholymole, you are live on Truth Wanted. Are you there? All right, not hearing anything from Unholymole. I'm going to put you back in the queue to see what's going on there. Until then, I want to get to the next one that was waiting in the queue here. Corey calling in from South Carolina. What's going on?
Hey, I just want to say to Nanette's last call, my heart goes out to you.
Yeah, for sure. It's I can't imagine what it's like to have that experience, and it scares me to think about. It really does. So props, super props. Anyway, Corey, what's going on?
Well, I was just going to talk about my story. I watched a couple Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen, and I was on there, and I was a Christian. This is 4 weeks. for 4 to 6 weeks now that I'm an atheist.
Holy shit, that's really fucking recent. Well, first of all, congratulations to you.
And it was also the help of the Discord. Like, that helped me out a lot. There's a lot of people in the ACA Discord that really helped me out.
Yeah, shout outs to that ACA Discord, which we will be in tonight after the show, which you should join us for. Shout outs to that. But anyway, yeah, Cory, holy crap, you watched AXP and now you are an atheist. Was it AXP directly that was your biggest influence? What was that like?
Well, what it was is just going across the shows. I just wanted to see the perspective of the other side. And when they brought out that I was wrong, I reevaluated it and I looked at the evidence. And I digged. And until I couldn't dig no more.
Yeah. Welcome to the club, Cory. That's like your response. I'm sorry, I want you to keep talking, but your response, right? Like, well, I looked at the evidence and I reevaluated my beliefs. Like, that's pretty much what we all have to say. Because, like, it's not as, like, fantastical as, like, a Christian conversion story. You know, it's just kind of like, nah, I kind of looked into it and I didn't think it was real. So I just think that's funny.
Yeah, and he looked at the Bible. Yeah, there's some dark stuff in there, and I even was at the point where, okay, our God is some dark shit. Like, he's got some answers to answer for, you know? And then I called into the atheist experience, and Matt just like, he definitely got something to ask for, you know? And so I thought that was pretty cool. And what I learned is, like, when I talk to people, is like it really hits down to, like, they got a bad perspective of us as an atheist, you know?
Oh, God, yeah.
I was even at work, and I was listening to this video, and it had some Christian music on it, and they were just like, oh, you can't listen to that. I still want to keep those things tied to me, personally. I still wanted to have Christmas. I still want to go and hang out with my Christian friends.
Hold on, Cory. Christmas is a pagan holiday. You know that, right? Like, you can do whatever you want with Christmas. They don't own that. I'm just saying. But yeah, like,
I know.
You're definitely right, Cory. Like, there is a cultural transition that happens in this process that I don't think a lot of people outside our community realize, right? They just think that we just are the way that we are. But no, like, there's a whole thing that happens with this, at least for those of us who, you know, once believed in it and now don't. So I'm glad you're waking up to that. I got to ask you, though, like, have you told anybody else outside the atheist community about this? Like, what's their experience been? Or are you keeping it secret?
I actually got, like, I made 3 friends, like co-workers. Yes, I know, going to work and talking about atheism. It was a topic that was brought up. I did not like the feeling that was brought up. Like, when somebody would come into the gas station that I worked at and say, well, God bless you. When I deconverted, that was like,
it's weird, right? Suddenly, the culture's not made for you anymore. You got to kind of figure it out on your own, right? Yeah, for sure.
But I wanted to talk to my friends about that. It was like, why are you feeling so down and stuff? Because we were friends and coworkers. And I was like, okay, guess what? It's like, I still want to have friends. I still want to participate in events. I still want you to care about me. I still don't want to lose my job just because my beliefs have changed. And it's like, all I'm just saying is that I just don't believe in your God. That's it.
Yeah.
It's like, I still want to be able to party with you. Still want to love you, you know? I still want to have fun, you know?
Yeah, Cory.
Like, this mentality where...
I was just going to say, you can do all that as long as you're not donating to any events, you know, or any church stuff. I think you're good. I think you're good, right? Yeah, but it is different.
Yeah, and And that's why I want to say to like any atheists or out there who having a hard time, you can still do the things that you love. This because I'm doing the things that I still love.
Yeah, I agree with
I'm
that.
I'm watching God Knight's Dead, but I'm laughing at it. But
Yeah, it is kind of freeing. It's like, yeah, you can do what you want, and the things that were previously taboo for you, now you can explore and deal with that. But I know atheists that will go to church with their family and stuff like that, and I certainly do whenever I go see them and stuff. It is there is meaning to the ritual. Like the ritual does have a sort of power in people's minds. And yeah, it doesn't have the same power for me as it does for them. But the act of me being there is meaningful to my family. And if that gives them a comfort and a sense of peace, I'm personally okay with that. I can see where people would want to kind of, abolish that altogether. But unfortunately, until I raise a family of my own, which, who knows if even that would happen, I have to kind of stick to some cultural mores with my family in order to kind of keep that relationship. But at the same time, they do respect my opinion, probably now more than ever. But religion isn't something that I talk about with them as much anymore, because they know that I'm probably going to have like a really complicated response, and they don't want to, talk about it anymore. But I'm so glad, Corey. I'm glad you decided to talk to me, and I'm glad you were talking to ACA Discord folks and stuff. Like, good for you, man. I wish you luck on your journey, and never stop learning stuff. Always keep wanting the truth, right?
Yes. Always look for the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Corey, I'm going to go ahead and let you go, but thanks again for calling in. Really cool. So glad that I got to talk to you. Yeah, it is crazy that I've been doing this for a little while now, talking about this stuff for a couple of years, and there's still people coming to this every day. I forget that sometimes. Sometimes I talk about this stuff. It's like, yeah, I've talked about this before. Everybody already knows what I'm talking about. None of this is new, but it is new to some people. Like, people are watching, and they may not always be vocal about them watching, but they're watching and they're listening. I know that when I was watching atheist videos, I didn't comment on channels or anything. I was kind of, looking out and seeing what was out there, sort of lurking. Right, that's the word I was looking for. Lurking a little bit. So, yeah, people are always watching. So, really crazy. What do you think, Zod?
As far as just the whole general experience,
yeah,
I think, boy, it's I think there's a lot to it when you first come out, and I think it's great that somebody was willing to hear evidence like that and not put up the resistance to it. That's one of the biggest things that brought me out, is just recognizing where I was struggling within my mind, and how I was trying to how I was trying to push certain thoughts to the back of my mind and not acknowledge certain things and stuff like that. So it's a journey, and being that brand new, it's a big place to be in life, and there's a lot of trying to still find your footing, and it's not always going to be easy. And like you said, you lose a lot, and people don't react to you the right ways. And sometimes you just want to stay connected with people. We don't see why it's a big deal that we just don't believe a certain proposition, but that means something to other people. And so there's a lot you lose, and a lot you kind of have to regain your footing on.
It's weirder to me when people don't think it's a big deal. I actually think it makes more sense for them to treat it like a big deal and react negatively than for them to not respond at all. Because it's like, whoa, like, I just told you this life experience I had, and like, you're not responding at all,
But there is within that worldview, it is going to be understood that you're giving up something that means a lot to them culturally.
Yeah.
But once you remove yourself from it, it does start to feel weird that they see your character so differently, just because you look around, you assess things, and you don't think a certain being exists.
Yeah, for sure. And it's
I struggle with that a lot, because I'm one of the most normal, down to earth, go to work, take care of my kids, family people. and people look down on me, and by comparison see these people as virtuous who live these just totally off the rails, irresponsible lives just because they acknowledge Jesus.
Yeah.
And every 2 to 3 weeks are talking about how they're falling back at Jesus. And me, my life largely looks like what a Christian's life would look like, except I don't go to church and don't believe in God and don't have some of these not so nice opinions of certain groups of people. But people's whole view of me is different, and that's
like a lot of Christianity, though. I'm just saying. But
yeah, part of it is just Christianity adapting to our society, and part of it is
that's true.
I wouldn't have become an atheist in order to sin, because I would just make a boring sinner, to be honest. Like, but still somehow, and that doesn't make me better than other people, and that's one thing I've grown to understand. I'm just not. But still, people look at me differently for anyway. Yeah,
I know it's stupid. People shouldn't look at you differently, Zod. You're cool, but we got like 5 calls here. We got like 30 minutes left, and I said I was going to speed things up, so I'm going to try to speed things up because I want to talk to everybody. And if I don't get to talk to, if for some reason we go on for way too long, hopefully you guys are on the Discord and we can continue conversations afterwards. Now, this next call is from Waco, Texas, my hometown, and this is Chaz. Now, is this a Chaz that I know from Waco, Texas, or is this a different Chaz that I've never met before?
Yeah, hey guys, thanks for having me on the show. Dan, I don't think we have ever met.
Okay, you scared me for a little bit there, Chaz, because I know a Chaz who I used to go to youth group with and recently got married. And I was like, oh my God, is this the Chaz I know? Did he find out about my show? He like goes to Baylor and everything. Real crazy.
No, sorry, man. I've never gone to church in Waco.
Yeah, that's good for you. I'll say that much. But anyway, go. What's up, Chaz? What's on your mind?
Yeah. Well, I was calling about actually real quick, Zod. I had a question for you. The origin of your name. I'm a big Superman fan. Is that the same Zod, or is that totally unrelated?
Yeah, it is the same one. The name honestly means nothing at all. I was just trying to come up with a name for my channel, and that the series of other things just rolled out there and it stuck. I just thought it sounded fun. So that's as much meaning as there is to my name.
Okay, cool. Well, no, so what I was calling about was social media and really the role that it's kind of playing in our society. A few weeks ago, I think Twitter, they kind of came out, and I don't know if you would call them censorship necessarily, but they started issuing corrections on, presidential tweets. And, there was a big hoopla in the news there for a minute. And a lot of people, there's kind of been a debate about, what the role of social media and censorship and free speech should be. And there's this notion now of whether social media should be like a public utility or if it should remain, purview of private business.
This is a great topic. I want to stop you right there because this is like I've thought about this and I don't have a good answer. I really don't. I think that yes, there is merit to the argument that it should be a utility, but we have so many different kinds of social media now. And I wouldn't want all of it to go to the state. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't want there to be some sort of free access there. Now I'm in favor of more regulation. Like I like that Facebook is at least putting more warnings on their content and stuff like that, because putting a warning on a content isn't affecting, like people can still access that information, right? They're not like completely blocked. They're just putting some things in there. And I'm okay with that. If Truth Wanted was on Facebook and we had like warnings, that wouldn't be great, but I wouldn't think that's a violation of my free speech because you can still watch the video. So like, I'm super okay with that. And if there were laws created to do that, I think that would solve a lot of the problems. But I don't know if making it a public utility would completely solve what you or I would want for it either. It's bad. Maybe like a LinkedIn thing as a public utility, that would make more sense to me. But what we use for our social media is so vast in its like uses, like it's so broad that I don't think that there's a way that you could make it viable for the state. But I don't know, Zod, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's good that they post fact checking links and stuff like that. And I don't consider that a censorship issue. This is a company who is allowing you a platform and simply providing information to what looks like a urban legend or a poorly fact-checked story or just basically a lie. I think that's a good thing. I don't really think the government should be involved in it, just because, not really based on any libertarian principle, but because I don't trust the government to get involved in that. And if the government has one well-intentioned way to kind of try to fact check within these things, without getting too specific, you could end up with certain politicians or parties trying to weaponize that. And there are certain calls to what they call fake news that I think could be, you could turn the whole, politicians could turn the whole process on its head. One of my bigger concerns is I see this being an issue that runs deeper than anybody's ability to regulate, which is, this is a broader social issue of how way too many people understand and digest information. And so I don't think you're going to fix that with a regulation. You're just going to get people angry and get them feeling censored. And until we educate the public in how to understand sources and how to understand what truth actually looks like, I think this is a way bigger problem that goes beyond social media and regulation.
Hey, Zod, you're a content creator. And you've experienced this. Other content creators like I do. How many times do we hear from our content creator friends, oh, my video got content ID'd, or it got demonetized, or it got something because of some automatic system, like a perfectly legit, or it got blocked in some country because it said something, we're already having that problem as it is. Yeah. And we would call ourselves the good guys. You know what I mean? It's like,
there aren't enough people to regulate it. Even within YouTube, there's not enough people to regulate it. So it gets put at the mercy of AIs who don't know how to recognize offensive content or inoffensive content when they see it. And I get things flagged for reasons that they can't even give me a reason. And there's like no plausibly offensive thing in my video at all. For some others, yes, there are, but for some there aren't. And it gets automatically flagged. And until I can finally get a person to actually look at it, every single time almost it gets monetized again. But it's too big of a problem to regulate. And I agree. I'd
like to get evil private interest stuff off of Facebook as much as anybody. I don't want people preying on others for that kind of stuff. But I don't think making it a public utility is the best solution. I think just making at least those warning systems, that's the best thing I can think of so far, without outright removing stuff. Now I'm glad some stuff gets removed, like InfoWars and stuff. I'm personally okay with that, but that's also how do you defend that? Where if they break their rules and their violations and stuff, sure. But there's always these controversies about how the rules are defined and how things, again, even content creators we know get stuck with these systems, and it's all a mess. It's all a mess, Chaz. The internet was a mistake. I think that's what we've come to the
there's no silver bullet to fix the idiocracy, basically. No. And it's all a symptom of how people think and how they digest information. And we can't fix that just by addressing the symptoms. Social media is just a platform. And absolutely. That's just where people go, and they're going to go somewhere else with all the same dumb ideas if we try to regulate it.
Yeah. Well, Chaz, I know you definitely have more to say, but I do have a lot of calls that I want to get to, and I told everybody I was going to speed things up. So I'm so sorry to let you go now. But man, I do appreciate you calling in. Guys. Absolutely. Thanks so much. And thanks for asking us our take on that, because that's a good thing to think about. When you tell people that, their concerns isn't the same as our concerns. Their concerns is I don't want the government getting in my business, that kind of stuff. It's
government's supposed to get in other people's business, not mine.
Right. I mean, and in this case, there's merit to it, but that's always whenever you say something about regulation or something about, that's people are wild. And maybe my anarchist callers would probably disagree with me there too. I have quite a few, but let's try to get to these calls here. Let's try again with Unholy Mole. Unholy Mole, let's see if we can hear you this time. What's up? Oh no, unholy mole.
Hello?
Hey, there you are.
Come on. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah,
We can hear you.
We can hear you loud and clear. What's going
good.
on?
Hey, guys. Hey, Zod. Hey, Dan. Big fans of you guys. I'm a longtime member of the atheist community. I usually don't call in. But here's my recent issue. I was dating a Pentecostal girl for like 7 years, and her son, I've raised him since he was 1 year old, and he called me the other day, and he was like, "Daddy, why don't you go to church?" And you know, I kind of just changed the subject, and you know, because I don't want to step on anybody's toes. He's at that age where I really can't explain it to him, and you know, in a proper manner why I don't go. You know, and I just I have no idea what to say to him. You know, I mean, because I don't want to have him taken away from me. His mom and me are still good friends. We just had to break up for ideological reasons, you know. Her dad's a pastor. I wasn't exactly well accepted into the family, you know. I mean, they're great people. I'm not going to say they're not, but you know, there was always that underlying, you know, they knew I was an atheist. It wasn't going to change. But what I'm getting at is, how do I approach this? I mean, I don't want to lose him, but I also don't want to step on their toes. I mean, what would be a good way to softly put it off or say to him until he's old enough to make up his own mind?
Oh yeah.
Should I just
everything I know
put him off softly?
Yeah, I've worked with kids in different capacities throughout my career, and so like the thing about kids that age especially is they can't differentiate from this is what mom believes, this is what dad believes, and this is what I believe. A lot of times they'll think like that what dad believes is true because dad believes it. Like they have problems of kind of separating opinion from fact when it comes to hearing it from authority figures, right? I think that's just true for any kid, especially at that age. And as they grow up, you know, obviously they're going to be able to make that distinction, but at an early age, it's harder for them to kind of suss that stuff out. So, you know, I think the politically correct kind of atheist answer would be, yeah, tell them that this is what you believe and this is what you think, and it's maybe different from what other people, but like, you know, at a kid at that age, I don't know that they're able to make that much of a nuance. So, yeah, like it's
that's what I was worried about.
It's super difficult. Yeah,
I think I've kind of gotten an approximation between the lines, but do you mind saying how old the child is?
He's 8.
8. Okay, that's what I thought.
Very indoctrinated.
Yeah. This actually is a huge topic for me, and this question means a lot to me because I actually share custody of children who have a Christian mother, and I'm not going to go into details about it because it wouldn't be great if I did. But some of my children are Christian and some are not. Some have become atheist, and this. So I've kind of walked this line a lot. I think in your situation, I can imagine how distressing it is knowing that you don't really have a custodial stake here, and that the child could go away from you at any time. I haven't dealt with that, but I still deal with the impact of what my words could be upon a Christian child, and how I navigate both what the mother's going to think and how the child's going to receive it at about close to that age with some of them. I would say, I guess if I were to say the first thing, it would be make sure you're having a conversation with the mother about how you address this. Is that something that's ongoing? If you could answer briefly.
Uh-oh. Unholy Mole, are you there? Oh, man.
If he and other people are hearing, I guess I'll try to briefly sum up so we can get to other callers, but I would make sure that the mother's involved in the conversation, because I think that has to happen. And then just what I've always told my children is I can talk about any of this when you're ready. And then I'm not going to bring it up. You bring it up if you have questions, but I want you to know that, yes, I believe things differently than you. I think they are able to comprehend that as they start.
Yeah, I was actually, my assumption was a bit younger. I think at 8, you're probably closer. I was thinking more like 4 or 5. But I realized
that would be
right.
That would be different. But about 8 to 10.
Hello, he's there. Cool.
Yeah, when they get to 8, you need to put it pretty softly and very literally. but you can say, I believe, I just don't believe in that. I understand that you do. That's totally fine that you do. I'm going to love you and care about you just as much and have just as much respect for you and be just as proud of you, even if you're still a Christian.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean
Right.
anything to
Right.
me.
That's what I'm going.
What kids need is to feel safe with both parents and to feel that they don't need to choose sides between parents.
Yes.
And as long as the two of you
Right.
can
Yeah,
make the
'cause-
child understand that, that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I don't want to alienate his parents or his family or anything like that. So that's how I've been going about it.
Yeah, but you also want to be true to yourself too. Like you don't want to, and you're a potential to be a good role model. Like you're a potential to be a good person in their life that doesn't have those beliefs. So yeah, I'd say it's tricky. But I already know. I don't know anything about this woman or her beliefs, but just from you telling me that they're Pentecostal, that tells me that there's a good chance they're just gonna say, yeah, this is the truth, and you're gonna listen to this. Because that's pretty. I think that's pretty typical amongst Pentecostal stuff. So it's like it's an uphill battle, and for sure. I think Zod probably has the better experience here and the good advice to take on for this. My only addition would be definitely look into more child psychology stuff too. See how beliefs affect kids at different ages, and see maybe there's some other people who have explored. I'm sure there's people who have explored this in way better and more expert terms. But I'm going to go ahead and go to the next calls here on Holy Mole. Thanks so much for calling in.
Awesome. No problem. Thanks, guys. Love you guys, buddy. Bye-bye.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it. That just makes me sad because that's a story that happens a lot. And yeah, I mean, you can relate to that too, Zod. And it's like, I didn't grow up like that. I don't know.
Even though I have custodial rights, that's still a huge source of anxiety. Is how is this child going to react to you, and what's the relationship going to look like? Mm-hmm. And I think just making sure it's a safe situation for the child, that they don't feel torn or that they feel like your approval is not at stake with what they believe. But then in Holy Mole's situation, definitely communicate with the parents and the mother particularly, and make sure that they're on board with how you're communicating. Because if you're afraid that the relationship with the child is at stake, I think that's something you really need to make sure is happening on an ongoing basis.
Yes, for sure. I agree. We got 2 more calls, and I want to try to get to both before we wrap up the end of this show. First, I want to talk to Stephen from Melbourne, Australia. Again, a country that, as canon of this show dictates, does not exist. Stephen, what's going on?
Hi, Dan and Zod. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely. I see from the call screener here that you think belief in God is a desperate attempt to sublimate a fear of death, meaninglessness, and suffering. That was the call screener's words. Is that what you wanted to talk about?
Yes, it is. I did vacillate a bit over the use of the word desperate because I didn't want to be overly pejorative. But I've been watching a number of these ACA programs and really been enjoying my time listening to the different views and believers attempting to justify their belief in a God. But the thread that I seem to identify is that I find that often believers will, and perhaps atheists do this too, will tiptoe around what I think are the central issues. And to me, that is that a lot of people are uncomfortable with some of the central truths of what it means to be alive. That is mortality, sickness, illness, death, meaninglessness, suffering, work, toil. So being very uncomfortable with that, sometimes having anxiety, fear, terror about that. God is a powerful tool for them to, I guess, reconcile with these fears.
Sure.
And that being the case, it's supremely difficult to attack that strategy for dealing with that central reality. So they might tiptoe around and debate issues about objective morality or whatever excuse that they might offer for a belief in God. But I think that most of the time we're not really addressing the real issue of why they believe, which is essentially wish fulfillment, wishing that things weren't as bleak and meaningless as they probably are.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
fear,
the crux of my argument.
We don't, because it's not fair for me to talk to a Christian that calls into the show and just be like, well, you're believing this because of fear, because I don't know people's hearts and I don't know, what the truth is. If they tell me that it is on fear, though, I'll believe them. So yeah, in conversation, right? It's not a polite thing to say. And also you can make assumptions there that, may not be 100% accurate, but, show me a serious religion that, doesn't have an opinion or a theory about what happens after you die or what happens, with death, right? I mean, like, you're right. That is an inherent part of what makes religion so appealing. It gives you answers to the questions that people have been having since people have been people. And so, it's definitely hard to address those elements without coming off as crass. But you can't deny it. You can't deny that that's there. I believe because, well, for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons was fear. Fear was one of the hardest things for me to let go of, just the fear of identifying as an atheist. Again, we talked about this a lot on this episode. Fear of losing my community, but also just fear of just not going to heaven. Like, that was the thing. And of course, now I'm not afraid of any of that, but like, that took time, and it took talking with other people about it, and it took research, and that was a motivated self-interest there. And if somebody doesn't have that motivated self-interest to kind of figure out what's real, what's not, conversations are just so much harder. What do you think about this, Zod?
I appreciate these insights into, I think it's good to introspect on what broadly might make religion appeal to people in general. I think there is definitely a danger, like you said, Dan, that you can't approach a Christian like this. That's a very disrespectful thing to do in conversation, or at least it will be perceived as disrespectful, no matter how softly you try to put it. I will say from personal experience, having long time been a believer and known a lot of different believers from different denominations, I really don't think you can boil why people believe down to any one specific thing. I think there are way too many factors that go into it across the religion, even within one person. I think there are a lot of different things that bring someone into and hold them in a religion. For me personally, fear was not really a part of it, except fear of giving up a certain identity that I associated with. I was more afraid of the threat of hell than I was of the possibility that God might not be real and I might just die and fall asleep. That would have been kind of a relief compared to what I was anxious about growing up. But I think it's really complicated. I think what I think it's good to introspect maybe internally on the various things that might get people into religion and why they fall to it. But to me, the more important thing is, what do these ideas do to how people think? What kind of conclusions do they lead them to, and how do they undermine our ability to approach them? So more than getting to why do people become religious, I like to think of what does religion do to our thought processes and our conversation, and how can we try to improve those? So I don't know if that helps.
I think that definitely helps. Steven, sorry, we're kind of running short on time here, so I'm going to let you go now. But thanks again.
Thanks for the time, though. I appreciate that. Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely. Yeah, glad we got to hear that take. And yeah, like Zod said, great insights. And there's nothing that I inherently disagree with. It's just, it's hard to, talk about it in a nice way, because it's going into people's psychology, and that can be...
It sounds a lot like you're an atheist because you want to sin, if you try to sin.
Yeah, it does. It does sound like too. Yeah, it definitely does. But let's get to our last call here before we wrap things up. I want to get to Hassan, who's calling in not from Venice, Italy, but Venice, California. Hassan, what's going on?
Nothing much. How y'all doing today? Something.
Today, we're doing just fine. Doing great.
Well, great. That's what's up.
So what's up, Hassan? How can we help?
Well, I posed a question to the screener, and because of what I do, I get into a lot of debates with both atheists and theists alike. So I was wondering, what's your insights on cognitive dissonance? Because that's normally the way that we normally say that, you know, the other person is off by their cognitive dissonance. So what's a good way to recognize it in the other person during a debate so you can point it out rather than having a constant back and forth that almost becomes a, I know you are, but what am I? Or vice versa. What would be some things to recognize it in yourself so that you'll stop debating when you've been bested by a better argument?
Yeah, I don't know about it specifically in a debate context, but I'll tell you a strategy I've used that seems to be kind of congenial for people. So if I'm hearing something and I'm thinking there's some cognitive dissonance there in what I'm seeing in somebody's belief, I always frame their beliefs into the context of how I could believe something. So for example, if somebody said, I believe in an afterlife, but I also believe in reincarnation. You know, I think, maybe they start talking about heaven, but then they also say, we reincarnate on earth for something. You know, that's something I've heard before. And so the way I do it as a rephrase, I'll just be like, that's really interesting. It would be hard for me to believe in an afterlife, but also believe in reincarnation. How do you exactly square those two beliefs? How do you get from point A to point B? And so when I'm doing that, I'm not saying that necessarily their idea doesn't make sense or that they have cognitive dissonance, right? Maybe there's an explanation there that I'm just not aware of. Instead, I'm giving them the chance to kind of explain or even rationalize how they believe something. And if that rationalization makes sense, oh, well, then that's a true belief, or at least, you know, maybe there's some truth to it and that could kind of follow the logic there. If not, maybe people haven't thought about it and it gives them a chance to kind of consider that. If you watch my video with Anthony Magnavosco, I think Anthony kind of did something of that with me when I talked about the non-overlapping magisteria argument. I was basically saying science and religion, they don't really go together. And then I can't remember exactly what he said, but you know, I think there was something like that. Zod, what is your spicy hot take on this question?
I think it's good. I think you're way better off between the two thinking about your own cognitive dissonance and trying to understand that, because it is a very personal and internal process. And I think you need to be constantly thinking through. This is one of the biggest reasons one of the biggest things that prompted me to come out of religion was understanding my own cognitive dissonance and seeing all the little wheels turning up there and recognizing where I was trying to use certain apologetics or dismiss certain doubts or whatever. That's one of the things that drove me toward lack of belief. So I think it's always good to be thinking about your own. I don't know if this is what you're saying, but I would never go to the point of pointing it out in other people, because that becomes, that it's a little presumptuous in most cases, because we don't know when people are really experiencing it. And even if we suspect it, pointing it out comes off as an accusation or a rhetorical tool to just say, you're wrong because you're experiencing XYZ. You're even if I sympathize with you, you're having misperceptions. Your argument's foundation is built on this empty thing. Let me instruct you on why. And that's never going to come off well. And especially with cognitive.
I really didn't. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, and I don't know if that's what you meant to say, but I guess if I were to.
No, I was going to say. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll clarify one thing real quick, and then if you have something to say, I would just say cognitive dissonance is. I think that's at a point where someone is experiencing very difficult things. They're at a really tense point in their understanding of whatever topic you're talking about. And that's one of the most important places to ease them into an idea. They're already feeling tension over something. And in my experience, a believer will often project that tension onto you. It's a very unpleasant feeling when you're a believer. And it takes very little for an atheist to say to exacerbate that. So I would just say, try to help them reconcile the things and ease that into position versus trying to quickly force it. And pointing out their cognitive dissonance is really forcing it. So anyway, sorry, I might have misunderstood what you're saying, but go ahead and continue.
I think you slightly misunderstood, but the end kind of summed it up pretty well, because I think that was Dan that spoke at first. The whole thing is I want to avoid any type of attack because people get defensive. So the idea is maybe when you see that their argument is showing the dissonance or whatever, or their actions are displaying the dissonance, you let them know that, hey, these are facts, or these are the information you're dealing with is not personal. It's not anything between you and I, to keep it out of the personal bickering back and forth, which was like what I
you still got to be careful
initiated
because you have to make sure that that person agrees with your facts first before you say, yeah, this is a fact, because one person's facts may not be another person's facts. And I'm not saying that in an objective sense. I'm saying that in the subjective sense, people are going to interpret facts differently. And so you got to make sure you're working with the same pieces, right?
And when someone's experiencing cognitive dissonance, that's a time when they're very easily going to feel condescended to if you say things the wrong way. And so it's very important. To me, I take it as a sign that you need to, that's a little bit of a hot zone in the conversation. You need to step back from it and ease your way toward it without patronizing them, without pushing too far, and without weaponizing that idea. I think that's an indication that they're at a place where they're in legitimate distress over an idea, and you need to kind of help guide them just a little closer to it if you can, and plant seeds that they can think about and gently, at their own pace, come to grips with it later on. But it's definitely not a place to, and I know this isn't necessarily what you're saying, but it's definitely not a place to push and become aggressive, because as a believer who experienced a lot of cognitive dissonance, and I'm not accusing all other believers of this, but for me, I very easily took offense at and felt condescended to by things that were just people just starting to approach an idea that was very tense in my mind. So I would just say use a lot of caution.
I did too. But Hassan, thanks for calling in to Truth Wanted tonight. Appreciate your call. And everybody who called in tonight. So many calls this episode and the past couple episodes, really. Like, we've had more calls than ever, which is great. That means, I can start off the show at a quicker pace, because usually, I'll if I see how many calls I got, I kind of space out the calls as evenly, but we started to get more and more, and it's like, oh God, I got to finish up. We got to talk to everybody, because there's never anybody that I feel like that waits for the show and doesn't get a chance to talk. And I saw some of you guys, you were on the line and you waited and then you dropped. So next time, definitely call in for my guest next week, because I appreciate everybody that calls in. But that about ends the show for today in terms of calls. But if people want to watch more of your stuff, Zod, where can people find you at?
On YouTube is my main platform. Just type Prophet of Zod pretty much anywhere. I'm the only thing that those search results are going to turn up. So YouTube, Twitter, I'm in ongoing conversation there. Other platforms like Facebook, I'm really not that involved in. I have a Facebook through Prophet of Zod, but it's not really active. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure I sent you a friend request like 3 months ago, and I don't think you responded, but that's okay. We don't have to talk on Facebook. That's just what it is. And like always, folks, if you want to support this show, patreon.com/truthwanted. That's a way to do it. Again, this show is made by volunteers like myself. It helps out make it better. And as you callers correctly pointed out, severely underrated in terms of subscribers in comparison to other ACA productions. So I appreciate it when you guys share and subscribe and like the show. You can also find the show on Spotify, iTunes, wherever else you might get your podcasts. I'm on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan. Another way to contact the show for any inquiries is the email. It's truth@atheist-community.org. And there's a Facebook group too, which I just posted at today because I want to be more involved in that. So I asked, what do people want to see in this in this group? And the first comment was more pictures of your cat. So I might do that. And of course, get some merch too. We got some merch. There's a link for that. There's a bit.ly link to get your cool Truth Wanted swag. I love that Truth Wanted swag. I'm wearing my hat right now. It's super cool. Last but never least, though, I gotta always thank the wonderful, awesome, magnificent, stupendous, superb, other adjective crew that helps make this show happen every week. Look at all the crew. So many people help make this show happen, and they're working behind the scenes. And I'm just so grateful. So yeah. Oh shoot. Oh wait, no, I got it. Hold on. So somebody, a Zaid man on Twitter, his mom made a cat toy for Pico and sent it to the ACA library. And so, yeah, if you ever want to send me or the crew or anybody at the ACA stuff, like definitely look up the the library address on the ACA website. I will show off whatever you guys send me because that's just great. And Pico loves this toy, by the way. Glad I got to do that before the end of the show. We're going to go to Discord, and you can ask questions to me and Zod. So please jump on the Discord for that. Any last words, Zod, before we wrap up tonight's show?
Just that I had a lot of fun. All the callers were great to talk to. This is a really fun show. Dan, I enjoyed doing stuff with you, so it was a really good time. So I appreciate having me on.
Absolutely. And I enjoy doing stuff with you too, Zod. Well, folks, that about wraps it up for another episode of Truth Wanted. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
We are sorry, but the show has ended. Goodbye.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing?